Welcome back to the Monmouth Basketball Hawks Nets podcast. We're going to wrap up the Canisius sweep this weekend. We're going to talk about Siena coming up. Iona is shutting down for COVID, and we're going to get some fan questions in today as well. All right. So we're talking about my grad school, actually. My main college was Monmouth University, and my grad school that I spent about a minute at, never went on campus, but got my degree there. Canisius, appreciate them for that, but that's about it. So I do have Mark on with me right now. What's going on, Mark?
Sweep! Feels good to come off of a sweep. We are riding high. Happy to be on with you again, Ryan.
So Monmouth just dominated Canisius the whole weekend. I mean, Canisius looked good for the first 8 minutes, like first 2 media timeouts of the first game. And I'm like, oh, this team's pretty good. They're middle of the pack, but maybe they're going to push us a little bit today. And after that, I mean, Monmouth went on these runs, and, Canisius came back a couple times, but Monmouth kept them at arm's length the entire game with an 18-point rout, 84-66 in West Long Branch, and it really was never a game after those first 8 minutes. And Canisius just looked like a team that just didn't belong. I mean, we saw that more in game 2 as well, and they just looked like a different conference. Like, they didn't look like a MAC team, and they just couldn't keep up with Monmouth's pace. And you know what? It's going to show how deep Monmouth really is, because we're playing 12, 13 guys every night for extended minutes. And most teams in the MAC can only give you 7, maybe 8 players that are actually capable of starting in the MAC and giving you good minutes. Monmouth's throwing out 10, 11 guys that can start for most teams in these types of conferences. And it's showing King Rice how deep his team is. And most teams just can't defend for 40 minutes when you have 7, 8 guys versus 12 guys. And it's really showing, and it showed a lot against Canisius.
Yeah, Monmouth right now looks like arguably the deepest team in the conference. And I thought Canisius would have given us a bigger challenge than they did. But again, I'm happy with any easy weekend series we can get.
Dion led the way in this one. He was awesome. 21 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. He's approaching Dave Calloway's career 3-point shooting record at Monmouth. And it's no surprise. This kid's been firing away since he was a freshman. And if he gets to stay next year, for an extra year, and he wants to stay, he's going to just destroy that record. No one's ever going to have a chance to break it. But, Dion led the way as always, as usual. Ruddy had a big game with 10 points, 4 rebounds, 4 or 6 from the field in 19 minutes. He's getting his legs under him. Ruddy looks really good right now. And after that, you got contributions from everybody. I mean, Malik was good. Miles Foster had a nice game. Gobb and McClary, all these guys that aren't your typical scorers for this team, really stepped up in a big way in this game. And it didn't need to be the Dion and Pappas and Totley show. And it doesn't have to be when all those guys are all playing well and contributing, because the first few games, you had a lot of Dion and George. And, this weekend, George played well, but he didn't play his best, didn't shoot his best. But it didn't matter, because everybody's stepping up. Everybody's making shots inside. Everybody's defending. And when you have that team coming together and this cohesion that we were worried about in the beginning, because, all right, Monmouth got shut down 3 times. We didn't play a game before. I think we were one of the last 10 teams or 20 teams in the country to play a game. And we were worried about how this team would kind of mesh and kind of play together in the beginning. And I guess we had nothing to worry about, because they're coming out and they look great. They look even better than they did in terms of chemistry when Ray was here. And you throw all these new guys into the mix with Totley and Vaughn and all the freshmen. This team has better chemistry than they did the last few years.
Yeah, like you said, everybody got in the mix. Everybody got some run in this series. Definitely riding high with their collective team chemistry and continuity. Wanted to jump in on one thing in this game. Jarvis Vaughn got absolutely hosed on the ejection call.
That was terrible.
Scott Hitchin, he's done this, if you want to be politically correct, extracurricular type of stuff. I just call it dirty plays from him in the MAC for years. He's a senior, and he initiated this whole sequence, a blatant elbow into Jarvis's ribs. And then, Jarvis went up high with kind of a soft elbow, but kind of to let him know, hey, I'm here too. I'm no punk. You're not going to, scare me because you've been playing in the MAC for 4 years and I'm a redshirt freshman. I just hope that with maturity, Jarvis will learn not to retaliate in such an obvious manner. Like Jarvis, give him an elbow back in his ribs, okay? Don't go up at the head. Uh, and overall, Jarvis was the one kid who had a really rough series with this early ejection Sunday, which was unwarranted, and then the foul trouble on Monday. I still think that with time and more maturity, and again more game experience for a guy who barely played last year, he will be able to have a better balance with playing with that fire and physicality that Monmouth needs from him, while also keeping his emotions in check and be a really, really important piece for us later in the season. It's kind of interesting. Jarvis has good skill, but with that edge that he plays with, he's starting to remind me of a guy who I liked in the NBA who had a live body like Jarvis. And this guy had skills, but not at the NBA level. And when you're trying to find that comparison, he reminds me a lot of Jerome Junkyard Williams, who was on the Knicks for a minute, and he had that 6'9" frame. He was athletic, and he was always at the brink of going above and beyond with the physicality and the intensity. And again, the Monmouth staff will work with Jarvis, and they'll find that balance. And I think that what he brings, in addition to the skill that we knew he'd have, but what he brings with this physicality, like letting Hitchen know, no, I'm not scared of you. Like, you're not going to back. I'm not going to back down from you, even though it's really my first year really on the court. Will eventually serve Monmouth really, really well on the court.
Yeah, let's call it a hot garbage call. I mean, when both guys do it, here's the thing. In the 1980s or 70s, when you didn't have this kind of replay and you weren't going to the monitor every 2 seconds for a call, all right, you're probably going to see the second guy that throws the punch or whatever they do, and you can't look back at it, and the guy who retaliates is going to get in trouble. We get that. But you have replay. Like, you could obviously go back and see they were both at fault for what happened. Like, go back and either both guys with the foul or let it go, give them a warning, and move on. And, it was one of those plays you're like, really? Like, all the replay we have, that's the call. But either way, I'm not worried about Jarvis at all. You're right. He plays with a huge edge, which we always like at Monmouth. But, the last podcast, I call this guy a future star because that's what he is. His skill set is not like what we see around the MAC typically. And, he didn't play very much at all last year. He played a few games and then got redshirted. His minutes are still a little bit soft right now because he's coming back from an injury and he's still finding his way within the team. But once this guy gets going, I just feel like he's going to explode and become one of the best bigs in the MAC just because of his versatility. He shoots it well from the outside, not so much three-pointers, but he's got that 15, 20-foot range down. He's just such a strong, athletic guy. I don't see a way that he doesn't succeed at Monmouth. As long as he keeps his head on straight, which I think he will, I don't see a way this guy doesn't become a really solid player for us. Just kind of wrapping up this game before we move on, Monmouth shot 54% from the field to Canisius' 34%. Now, you look at the rest of the stats, and Monmouth won the boards 40-38, pretty close. It was 15-15 on turnovers. And you look down the stat sheet for the teams, and it seemed like a pretty even game, except Monmouth just shot it so much better than Canisius did. And credit Monmouth's defense there. But, I mean, Monmouth shot the lights out once again. I mean, another 80-plus point game. That's not even close to what they did in game 2 here. But, it was just one of those games that everything kind of came together, and Canisius didn't play well. And it led for a very long day for Canisius in game 2. Did you have anything else for game 1?
No, it's easy to review games when we win so easy, and there's not a lot of stuff to break down where we have to critique. Very happy with the performance up and down the roster on Sunday.
I mean, game 2 was embarrassing. I mean, from the very start, you kind of knew how this game was going to go. I mean, Monmouth, I think it was 11-0. I mean, they went on a huge run to start the game. And Canisius never even got close. Monmouth wins this one 97-69. 97 points, good God. Absolute domination mode in West Long Branch. And, you kind of stated before, Um, Monmouth's gotten off to some slow starts so far. Um, or they get off to a hot start and they slow down in the second half. They've kind of been a one half wonder at times. And I know it's still early in the season, but sometimes they start really hot and they slow down. Sometimes they start slow and they end hot. This game, they put it all together and they get off to a really hot start. Dion Hammond, 16 early points, and they really didn't need him at all in the rest of the second half because they're up by so much. Why are you going to risk Dion twisting an ankle or somebody trying to dunk on him and doing something stupid out there and losing him for the season? It was a great move by King Rice, and he hit his 16 points before you could even blink. And it was one of those games that just Canisius couldn't get out of the gym quick enough and get back to Buffalo. And I mean, it was an embarrassment from the start.
Who wouldn't want to go to Buffalo? I know 6,700 fans that are going to be there real soon. Uh, but when you're talking about a game like this and you're talking about resting your starters, one thing I liked with King was he went to the deep bench early. And I guess those five guys, that combination, didn't do something that he liked a few times up and down the floor. And he yanked them all out and put in all five starters for about 16 seconds. Dion got a steal, breakaway dunk. Canisius called the timeout. Then I guess King probably sat down and said, look, you five guys who aren't starters, look at what they did in the 16 seconds. That's what I expect. That's the level of expectation, the level of success that we need this year. It was a good teaching moment, and just part psychology there from King Rice with his young players. Like Donovan Totley in this game, season high 16, had a nice run out there, played 18 minutes. I thought he could have had a little bit of extra time out there, a couple more minutes, because again, he's rounding into the Monmouth system, getting more game action and experience after not playing in games for almost 2 years. Could have gotten a couple more minutes out there to continue to shake off that rust, but he looked good in this one. One thing we got to watch with him now, we got a second technical of the year in this one, jawing about going to the hoop and not getting a call on a drive. That's definitely something they're going to have to manage with him. And I know you and I, when we had gone to that opening blue-white night Mac Madness Oceanverse Bank Center opening event 2 years last year, and we had seen Totley, we said he's got the personality, he's got the charisma, he's going to own the court. And I think that King and them have to manage that from his confidence and then, keeping those emotions in check as well.
Yeah, and that's something where, they've talked about Donovan still trying to fit in with this team and on campus, and he's going to. And King Rice has said in the pressers a couple times, I'm taking him under my wing. I'm going to teach him. He's going to learn. He's going to be fine. And I fully believe that. I mean, King does a really good job with that, bringing guys in, sometimes even edgier guys that come from different backgrounds and maybe don't know the way Monmouth does things with King Rice. And he teaches them, and they always become great guys and great players, and they're great role models for the university and ambassadors for the university. And, we're proud to watch them and represent our college. And Totley's going to be one of those guys. He's just learning his way with this team. I love the way he plays out there. It's a little discombobulated right now. And like we said, he's still getting used to getting together with this team. But once he figures out his exact role and where he stands and realizes just how good he is with this team and how good he and Dion can be together, he's going to be rolling. And once he gets rolling, I mean, look at this team so far. They're 3-1 in the MAC with a 2-point loss to St. Peter's. And he hasn't even gotten rolling yet. He's played well, but we know there's a whole level of Donovan Totley that we haven't even come close to seeing yet. So that's got to be scary for other MAC teams, because when you look at what Dion and George and Malik and these guys have, Marcus, what these guys have done so far, and Donovan is scoring but isn't even doing what he can do, these teams are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he has the look of a guy that could drop 30 any night. So it's interesting. You see him out there and he's finding his way, and sometimes it feels like he's forcing the issue, and sometimes it feels like he's going rogue. But it's so interesting because King Rice doesn't really run a lot of sets, and he gives his players so much offensive freedom. And again, I do think that the best of Donovan Totley is coming later on in the year. And again, I continue to harp on that he and Jarvis are going to be those two guys that by the end of the MAC season and MAC tournament are going to be the guys that take us over the top to that next level.
Yeah, and even Marcus McClary, he was getting a lot of praise from Eddie and Matt Harmon, and I think Steve on the first game as well, being really a glue guy for this team. And when Marcus McClary is scoring 11 points and hitting shots on top of his defense, now you're really in trouble because he's not a guy we expect a lot of offense from. And last year he came out of his shell a little bit and played well on offense most of the year. And this year McClary has looked really good out there. He looks confident. You're not scared when he touches the ball every time. I mean, he looks really, really solid out there. And then you're getting contributions. A really nice game from Gob Gabriel. Another big game from Miles Ruth. Clement Vuga, my guy, looking like a stud out there. First rookie in a couple of years to score 10 points in the game. Looked great. Malik is doing everything out there. Malik is defending. He's banging three-pointers. He's blocking shots. Malik Martin, I mean, right now he's like the third best player on this team. And again, this is a guy I said his freshman year that maybe didn't belong in D1. And this dude has proven me wrong time after time. And I know better now than to say anything because I know how good he is. And Malik is doing everything right now. And I'll tell you what, things might change once Donovan gets more shots and Vaughn comes in a little bit more and guys start figuring out their roles. But I would say right now, Malik Martin is playing at a level like all MAC third team. Like he's playing at that kind of level right now where nobody's really stopping him out there. And he's kind of doing whatever he wants. And he does it quietly because he's not the first or second option on this team. So, right now, Malik Martin is playing at an all MAC level. And when you get all these guys firing at all cylinders, this is a scary team to play.
Yeah, I like to call Malik and Marcus McClary M&Ms because they just kind of are interchangeable in what they do. And how about this stat, Ryan? For the Canisius series, when you add Malik and Marcus's offensive production and you average it out for the two games, they averaged a combined 17.5 points per game in those two games. If we can get that type of production from those two guys, who are guys that you don't generally look for on the offensive end, we're going to be a really, really tough team to contend with because then you pretty much have your third scorer from that undersized power forward spot between the two of them. So then you're rolling out Dion, you're rolling out George or Donovan, whichever one is your second or third, and then that power forward spot getting you that type of production, unbelievable. Gob had a really nice series, probably the best 2-game stretch of his Monmouth career. Your guy Vuga got a ton of garbage points in this one, but good for him for taking advantage of it. He's big. He passes the ball well. King Rice was talking about his passing in the post-game presser. This was a series to run your end of your rotation guys extra minutes, rest your starters. Between the two games, Dion Hammond capped them out with, I believe, 25 or 26 minutes played on Sunday. That's it. No starter played more than 19 minutes on Monday, which was Malik Martin. Dion and Pappas each only played 17. Miles Ruth, it looks like he's got energy to run for days. He had 25 minutes on Monday. I don't think that'll bother his legs.
Not at all.
You bring everybody's confidence up. You bring up that continuity, all the guys cheering for each other. I mean, when you saw Jack Holmstrom make his first career three-pointer, it was almost shades of the old Monmouth bench because the guys were going ham for him for that. When Foster had those nice drop step moves, you could hear J.R. Reed's voice echoing throughout the Ocean First Bank Center, and his voice wasn't the only one who was screaming with support for a guy who's at the end of the rotation right now. It just brings up all that continuity and all of that cohesion for that massive MAC showdown coming up with Siena. And one thing that I wanted to harp on real quick is, remember, we were talking about Majesty Brandon, who's an 18.5 point per game kid, and one of the best individual scorers. That means you give him the ball and you let him go get a bucket. He's shifty. He could shoot it. He could drive it. He's got a step back. Monmouth held him 9 of 31 from the field combined in these two games. He's a guy that might not be an all-MAC first-teamer, but he's definitely in the mix for a second-teamer. And, he's one of the top 5 individual scoring talents in the MAC. and Monmouth just totally took him out of his game, which makes you very hopeful when you're going into playing Jalen Pickett next week.
Yeah, 9 for 31 for Majesty is definitely going to work. I'll take that every day. Monmouth shot 59% from the field, 59 from three, which is just ridiculous. They won the boards by a couple, only 8 turnovers, which is a great sign for this team, especially for a team that, according to Ken Palm, was, I think, as of the first game, 7th in the country in terms of pace of play. So we are the 7th fastest paced team in the country out of 300 plus there are. And when you only have 8 turnovers and you fly at that pace, that's a great sign for your team because you're moving the ball, you're sprinting up and down the court, and sometimes that leads to turnovers, whether it's a long outlet pass or kind of fumbling and losing your train of thought for a minute because you're flying all over the court. Turnovers happen in those kinds of offenses, and they have for Monmouth over the years. When you're only turning over 8 to 10 times a game, and you're going that fast, that's a great sign, and you're going to get a lot of shots up and a lot of possessions, and it's a great sign for Monmouth right now. So before we move on, do you want to go to Siena preview, or do you want to do fan questions first? What do you think, Mark?
Do we want to make the fans wait it out? I think that's the way that the radio show guys do it, right?
All right, do your Siena preview, and then we'll get to this. So Siena coming up, they've been shut down so many times for COVID, and we kind of got lucky. We got shut down before the season at the very beginning. And knock on wood, we've been good to this point. Hopefully, we can keep this team healthy. It seems Monmouth is being very strict with their protocol. So hopefully, we can keep making it through the season without getting shut down again. We'll see what happens. But Siena is just getting back. They have 3 days of team practice before they get to see Monmouth. Now, these guys have been in the gym shooting, some of them, but 3 days of team practice, running an offense, setting up your defense, box out drills. All of that is going to happen in 3 days, and Monmouth is going to get them at the best time we possibly can. And listen, it's not a team you can overlook because they are the favorite in the MAC. They were supposed to win in Albany last year. They have the best player in the conference who may get drafted by the NBA this year, which is very rare for a MAC player. And, you can't overlook them. They're going to come out firing. They're going to play well, but you couldn't be getting Siena at a better time right now.
Yeah, you know what? The MAC schedulers, the only favor they had given us in the beginning was we were getting Iona early before they were able to gel, and then we kind of got screwed on that because that game got changed, and now I feel like, and you don't want to – we are not cheering for COVID shutdowns or anyone.
No.
Like we want these student athletes, and credit King Rice, who has consistently said on almost every press conference how badly he feels for Coach Carm and the Siena kids and how much he wants the nation to see Jalen Pickett and Siena on display for the MAC. We don't want this to happen, but on the other side of it, when you have a chance, right? Like, what do they say? They say that when a shark goes around in the ocean, it looks for an injured fish, right? It looks for that trace of blood. Siena might be that injured fish right now, and we might be that shark. So this is the game that Monmouth and Siena fans were clamoring for in Atlantic City last March after Siena bulldozed the Hawks 86-72 in Monmouth's home finale. While the end of the game featured some wild exchanges, including pushing, restrained players, screaming as emotions really rode high, and with Monmouth returning so many players from last year's squad, and Siena returning their top 2 stars as well, it will be interesting to see if that can carry over nearly 10 months later and possibly build a rivalry between these two teams. Siena scouting report for everybody. It's their big 2. They got that 6'4" junior point guard, reigning MAC player of the year, expected to be MAC player of the year again. Jalen Pickett, last year, 15 points a game, almost 5 boards, 6 assists, a steal, a block. He does it all, people. He's the best player in the MAC. He controls the pace and the tempo of the game with his smooth ball handling and dynamic playmaking skills. Then he can rise up on you and shoot over you. He's got a reliable jumper. He's got a nice back to the basket, low post game, a la Jason Kidd, Mark Jackson. Sometimes he will lull you to sleep and then strike you like a tiger hunting its prey. He is an absolute load and will be a huge challenge for the MU guards as he poses a unique threat in that he is a big, strong guard who also plays the point. A little bit different than a high-scoring small guard like Majesty Brandon or the St. Peter's guards who were smaller. Again, I'd like to see Marcus McClary thrown on him some, which is what I called for last year as Pickett was continuously drilling us in both games. Then you got the 6'7" senior forward Manny Camper, best rebounder in the conference, might be the second best overall player in the MAC. Almost 14 points a game, over 10 rebounds a game last year. So athletic, has a great second jump, times rebounds super well, plays to his strengths. He posed a really hard matchup problem for Monmouth last season. And we'll see the senior Malik Martin matched up with him, who probably gives us our best chance with Malik's length, size, athleticism, experience, and defensive intensity. The good news for Monmouth, last year's 3 other Siena starters, names like the center Elijah Burns, who came from Notre Dame and was 14-6, gone for graduation. Shooting guard Donald Carey, who was a star at Mount St. Mary's, made it to Siena, followed Jamie and Christian, over 11 points a game. He was 6'5". He could shoot it. He could handle it. He had played point at Mount St. Mary's. Gone. Grad transfer to Georgetown. And their freakishly athletic small forward was their standout freshman, Gary Harris Jr., who was over 5 points per game and really started to hit his stride as the year went on last year. Gone. Transfer to Loyola Marymount. Additionally, arguably their top incoming player, Rhode Island transfer forward Dana Tate, who I said could be like a Mike Glover eventually in the MAC, being 6'7", being versatile, gone, just left the program. This leaves Siena with a lot of holes to fill and roles to be allocated that can take time to mesh, which definitely benefits Monmouth getting them for their first 2 games of the year. Guys to look out for on that Siena roster. And again, we're looking at Siena as they were the preseason pick number 1, but I don't know if that's as strong of a separation for them anymore with these defections. You're talking this redshirt freshman wing, Aiden Carpenter, who has a ton of buzz as a Rookie of the Year candidate. They brought in a Belmont grad transfer guard, Nick Hopkins, who was a career over 6 point per game scorer, shoots it well from the 3 and the free throw line, but he's only 6 feet tall, which is a little bit different than when you had Pickett and Carey, 6'4", 6'5". I believe their starting backcourt this year will be Pickett at 6'4" and Hopkins at 6 foot, and then probably Carpenter on the wing at 6'5". Makes them a little bit smaller. And again, they're going to be a little bit smaller up front without that 6'9" ACC talent Elijah Burns gone. You're talking maybe the young 6'7" freshman surprise Colin Golson, who was under-recruited, or they brought in a Detroit Mercy grad transfer wide body Harrison Curry, who has good skills, but he's always hurt. So there's a lot of question marks for a team that just months ago, when they had Harris and Tate in tow, were essentially a unanimous first place preseason pick. And again, my X factor, when you're looking at Siena, you're really swinging blindly here, as there are so many question marks for who's going to round into those big roles after their big 2. I'll go with Aiden Carpenter, who those loudmouth Siena fans continue to pump up as their next big star up there near that beautiful city of Albany. On a related note, Siena fans, probably the most unbearable in the MAC on the internet.
By far.
I've been up to Albany for the MAC tournament. I always say I met a lot of great people up there. They were courteous, they were hospitable, they were welcoming to me as a Monmouth fan, but Monmouth was never playing Siena when I was up there. And one night I did unfortunately run into 4 completely hammered Siena fans. And while they were in that great city on the streets of Albany, they were drunk or high out of their minds and screaming about Nico Clarith at me. That must be the guys that are behind the keyboards for the internet savvy Siena fans. Siena fans view them as bigger and better than the MAC in all facets. They continue to beat the drum, as Ryan says, to celebrate that regular season banner last year and proclaim that they're...
There you go, guys. Good job.
Yeah, the class of the MAC, as they say. I don't really ever say, Ryan, that an early January game or series is a statement opportunity. But I think with Siena being who they are and Monmouth trying to ascend to be the top dog in the MAC, this series means a lot. MU should try to run Siena out of the gym as they're coming off a third COVID shutdown, as we had said earlier. And before anyone gets on me about this, Hofstra and St. Peter's definitely planned to do the same thing to us when we were starting out off of our shutdowns. We don't wish
this has
COVID.
to be
We don't wish COVID shutdowns, poor health, anyone at any time, but I surely do wish some poor performance and results for the Siena Saints this Sunday and Monday.
Listen, you have to jump from the start. You got to play all your guys. You got to jump them from the start. And listen, bottom line is, I don't care what your situation is, because whether it's a COVID shutdown or you lost your player to an ACL injury or something happened that you didn't see coming, you got to play the game. The Giants didn't want to play this NFL season without Saquon Barkley, but guess what? He's not there, and now you got to play against them. You're not going to go easy on them because they lost Saquon Barkley. You're not going to go easy on the Warriors because you lose Kevin Durant. You play the team that you play at their ability and whatever they're dealing with, and that's it. And you know what? You step on the throat from the beginning, because these 2 wins matter, because in the end, it's very difficult to sweep anyone this year in the MAC. And if you sweep them now, I'll tell you what, in a month from now, no one is sweeping Siena. All right. If they get going and they're not shut down anymore, no one is going to sweep Siena after the next couple of weeks. So, if we can get a couple extra wins there, and those 2 wins are a difference between us being the number 1 seed and getting a good matchup in Atlantic City versus going 1-1 and maybe we're the 2 or 3 seed, you get every single win you can, and you never apologize for someone else's shortcomings. You can sympathize, but you never feel sorry for it or give into it. And you know what? I kind of wonder if this Siena team, losing all of these guys, taking so much time to get back in the court, if they could wind up being a disappointing team, kind of like Ryder last year, where they had so much senior talent, and then one guy leaves, or they don't mesh together at the end, and they can't come together. They lose these ridiculous games. And I kind of wonder if there's so much hype around Siena and everybody forgets about Monmouth and Iona and St. Peter's and Niagara. And, Siena winds up losing some games early on. They don't mesh right away. And maybe it's not this banner season for Siena that everybody's talking about. Because, listen, that was a banner season coming up when you had all of those guys. All right, you don't have all those guys now. Yes, you still have Pickett, but you don't have all those guys anymore. So this is not going to be this 20-0 cakewalk for Siena that some people in Buffalo saw coming. This is going to be a tough season for them, and I still think they'll have a bye. They're still a top 3 team, odds are. But you know what? A couple of early losses here and there could really hurt them. And I don't know. I'm skeptical. We're going to see what happens with Siena this weekend, and we'll I don't know. We'll see how Monmouth handles them.
Yeah, if you want to do an overlap with this, you could kind of say this would be like if Justin Robinson and Micah Seaborn were both coming back for, a 5th year, whatever you want to say. But
right.
Hornbeak, Josh James, Colin Stewart, Chris Brady were all gone. It's not the same team. Yes, you have 2 guys who can transcend the talent in the MAC. But when you don't have that 3rd guy, that 4th guy, that 5th guy that that you can count on in different facets of the game to support your stars, it changes how things go.
So, you got anything else on Siena, or we're good for there?
We're good. I think I was pretty comprehensive on Siena.
All right, so we're going to get to some fan questions right now. First time we're doing it this year. We're going to do this every weekend, and it's kind of a nice setup for us with the podcast this year. Obviously, nobody really wants the back-to-back games. I know King Rice and the players hate the back-to-back games, and I don't blame them one bit. For our purposes, it works out because we only have one podcast in a week, and it's not a Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. We're trying to figure out, which games should we pair together in the podcast? Do we have enough days to get enough listens to make it worth doing it? It's just, all right, 2 games, we bang it out. Everybody listens during the week, and we go to the next one next weekend. So it actually works out pretty nicely for us with the podcast, despite the coaches and players and understandably not being happy about it. But we're going to take fan questions every week. And I know I was kind of late on it last night. Apologies there. But we did get a decent amount of questions for today. So we're going to do this before every week. We'll try to give you at least a day notice because we don't always know when we're doing the podcast. Sometimes it's last minute and we say, all right, want to do it today? And we wind up doing it. So the first one comes from Kathleen. Is Monmouth that good or is Canisius that bad? I think it's a combination of both. I think Canisius was projected a little bit high. I don't think Canisius is quite that bad. I think Monmouth played that good and made them look that bad. I think Canisius is probably around the 7th to 8th team in the MAC. They looked like the 11th team. They looked like the 12th team that doesn't even belong. But I don't think they're that bad. I think Monmouth just looks really good right now. They're shooting the ball well. They're defending. And I think Monmouth looked that good. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of both. But sweeps are hard to come by, and we won't apologize for any of them. And I thought Canisius would have posed a bigger threat, but luckily Monmouth coasted to 2 large victories. And Kathleen, I hope that's what you wanted to hear.
Another one from Kathleen. My 2 cents. There has been much hand-wringing over the years from Hawks fans about the lack of recruiting news from King Rice. But if this is the result, I'm okay with King Rice being as healthy as a B2 Spirit. Kathleen, I get it. We're always a little critical, and we want to see more recruiting news. We want to know who's coming in, and sometimes there's these big recruits that Monmouth in on, and we don't get it. And then all of a sudden, this random guy comes out of nowhere. Like, where the hell did he come from? And you're right though, especially for this class. Miles Ruth came out of nowhere. Clement Vuga really came out of nowhere. He wasn't even on campus. Jack Holmstrom looks like he might turn into a nice piece. Miles Foster got some great minutes this weekend. I'm with you, Kathleen. If he brings in these guys and he's stealthy about it, I guess it doesn't matter how we feel about them preseason or if we know who they are or not, if they're on some kind of ranking list or if they didn't get recruited by anybody. If they're going to play like this, I guess I'm fine with it too.
Yeah, I like this freshman class, and they are showing to be more ready than Ryan and I had expected. But I do think that Monmouth fans overall need to pump the brakes a little bit on anointing these guys and putting too much pressure because they're true freshmen. However, King and company always identify those under-recruited kids and develop them. That being said, I'd still like to get some 3 or 4 stars on the court in West Long Branch. When you think about the guys that Monmouth has narrowly missed out on. Last night, you know what I was watching, Ryan? UConn DePaul. You know the guard matchup I got to see for a little bit?
Oh, I know what.
RJ Cole versus Ray Salnave.
Yep.
And RJ Cole is one of those players where we had identified them. Ryan and I both wanted him, and then we missed out on him. He ended up being, I think, the top scoring freshman in the whole nation on Howard. Then he was a big scorer again his sophomore year and then transferred up to UConn. You need a balance. So, yes, I like that King and his staff can find those under-recruited gems and develop them. But Ryan and I still want some of those big-time recruits to come in as well, whether it be a bounce-back transfer or big-time, highly rated freshman.
All right, so moving on.
By the way, UConn,
Oh, yeah,
UConn 82, DePaul 61.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but it's kind of speaking for itself out in Chicago right now. I'm just gonna leave that there. Let's go to Brian on Facebook. He had a similar question to somebody that questioned earlier. We'll get to them too. Brian asked, with such a strong freshman class, is there a chance we will see the bench get increased playing time, or are we relying more heavily on the seniors? I think you're going to see the long bench the entire season. Now, we know that King Rice throughout his career always plays a lot of guys early in the season, and then he shortens it. I feel like with this COVID season, we're going to see a lot of mixing and matching and guys running on and off the court like hockey line changes. I think with some series such as Siena, Iona, maybe Niagara, I think the bigger teams, you might see guys limited a little bit because, you want Dion and George and Malik and and Ruddy and your starters out there for more of the game versus the better teams. You need Dion playing 35 minutes against Iona. You need that to happen. But I still think the strength of this team is our depth because everybody's playing well. So I don't think we're going to get away from that very much. I think in the bigger games, you might see a little more minutes limited sometimes, but I think overall we're going to stick with a long bench all season.
Yeah, and I did promise this year to not be as critical of rotations and role allocation as things get going here. And I'm going to continue to have patience. It's hard without a full preseason, a full offseason, full non-conference schedule. And then with the series, the way it is with the back-to-backs, if you have 11 guys who can really play, run them up and down and try to use the fresh legs. And then come the MAC tournament or the end of the MAC season when you're playing for seeding, then maybe you identify your top 9 guys.
All right, this comes from Kev on Twitter. What's up, Kev? Thanks for joining us. What's the two-part question? What's the weirdest part about this season so far in relation to COVID guidelines, and how are we looking as far as finishing the season out? The weirdest part, I mean, the back-to-back is weird. I mean, getting 2 Monmouth games in a row, obviously we love those 2 days, but having these teams play 2 days in a row in the same building with no fans, with the same refs that pissed you off the day before, and now you got them again. It's I think that's a weird part for me. The shutdowns and the schedule changing left and right. I mean, we didn't know we were playing Canisius until a week before on that date. We didn't think we were playing Siena on this date. Everything is changing left and right, and it's going to be interesting late in the season to see how these schedules change. Like if Monmouth gets in a full season now, and Siena and Iona are way behind, are we going to have like 2 weeks off before the MAC tournament? Like those are the questions that are unanswered right now. And to me, the scheduling and the back-to-backs are the weirdest part for me.
The weirdest part for me was that Monmouth didn't start playing college basketball nearly a month after the bulk of the NCAA Division I started. And that for me was so weird because as people know, like I'm a basketball nut. I love college basketball, but it felt empty without Monmouth playing. So as many college games as I could check in on and watch, and again, I have some teams that I do check in on and watch and enjoy besides Monmouth, but there's nothing like Monmouth basketball, and that was the weirdest thing for me. As far as finishing the season, let's just continue to hope that and pray that everybody stays safe, wears their mask, does things the right way. I was really worried about kids going home for Christmas break and then coming back. It seems like, knock on wood, I have my wood table here, that Monmouth made it through that safely. So, let's just hope that, that things get better with the COVID numbers and with the vaccines and people stay safe. And you know what? If there has to be delays and we have to do March Madness in April or May, does it really take anything away from March Madness? I don't think so.
Who cares? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Kev, I wish I had a crystal ball for you.
Kev coming out firing on us with some tough questions.
I had my wedding postponed in July and pushed to this July. We still don't know what the hell is going to happen. So, I wish I had a crystal ball to talk about MAC games. I think at this point, I think most schools have gotten stricter as each one's gotten shut down. And I think they're doing a good job. At this point, I think we will eventually get the games in. I don't think it's going to end on the date it's supposed to end. I think there will be more shutdowns, unfortunately, just the nature of this thing and the way it's been going. But I do think we will finish. I don't think March Madness is going to happen right away. I think it's going to be more April, but I do think we'll get the games in. From our friend Guy on Twitter, from Iona, do you guys think all the MAC schedule switches favors the good teams or the bad teams? I don't think it's a matter of good and bad. I think it alludes to what King Rice said early in the season, and that teams that handle this the best are the ones that are going to be there at the end. And you know what? You can say, Monmouth's a good team, and it favors them because they have a deep team and they've handled the COVID situation well since they've started the season. You can say it's hurt Siena and they're a good team because they obviously haven't handled it as well as Monmouth has. And again, that may not be because of protocols. That might just be bad luck. That's COVID. Some people wear their mask all day long and get it, and some people are on Facebook going all over the world and they don't get it. So I mean, that's this thing. It's just random. I think it favors the good teams a little bit because if you're a better team and you're able to handle this, it just gives you even more of an advantage. But I don't know if it's a good team, bad team question. What do you think, Mark?
All right. First of all, I'm going to say that it favors good coaches best
Yeah, yeah,
because, if you're a Rick Pitino, you've been doing this forever. If you're a King Rice, you've been doing this a long time, right? Versus, maybe a less experienced coach or maybe a coach that we think is a bum. Then it definitely favors a coach that can adjust on the fly. The one thing, and Guy, listen, I think Rick Pitino will be ready for anything. So, Guy makes it so much harder to hate Iona. It's so tough for me.
he's a good guy.
But he's a great dude. But with a coach like Rick Pitino, who's seen it all in all those years, I feel like he's a guy who can go from preparing for one team on Monday to preparing to another team on Thursday and be fine with it. The one thing going Monmouth centric with this is that King Rice, I don't believe that him and his staff are big analytics guys. And I don't believe that they're a big staff on worrying so much about what other teams do. King Rice has always been a proponent of we're going to do what we do and make other teams handle us. And in previous years, sometimes I feel like that shouldn't always be the mentality. And I know that Rick Callahan comes up with a great game plan, and the guys on that bench definitely do break down the other teams. But the overwhelming message from King is, I got my guys, you have to deal with us. And I feel like this year, if you're playing Siena and you think you're playing them on Monday, and then on Thursday you're playing Manhattan, King Rice's mindset and the way that he pumps up those kids that people can't stop them and we are going to impose our will ultimately might really help Monmouth in a situation like that.
All right, so we're gonna fly through these last three questions. We are running out of time here. We're getting a little late. Ross on Facebook. What's up, Ross? Given the uncertainty of the season and the cancellation delay of the season, do you think King will shorten his bench, or will he view this year as a learning experience and building year for these guys? I think a little bit of both. I think, like I said before, for the big games, I think he might shorten it a little bit. Even if he doesn't shorten the bench, it just might be limited minutes for those guys. I think King Rice always wants to win, and he's always a learning experience guy. And sometimes, we've been critical in years past that. Sometimes, although the goal of this is to develop young men into being respectable and successful people at college. And then second is winning basketball games. And sometimes we've been critical that sometimes he focuses on that too much instead of winning games. But it's true. You respect the way he goes about it. So he's always trying to have a learning experience out there, which is great for his players. I think he's going to keep the deep bench. I don't think he's going to change that at all. I think it plays to our strength, and I think he is going to keep playing these guys in most of these games.
Ryan, you remember a few years back, the Atlanta Hawks, they brought over the Spurs assistant, Mike Butenhoser, and they had guys like Teague and Corver and Millsap and Horford, and they won like 60-something games playing all these guys and running people out of the gym. And then when it came to the playoffs, they ended up getting upset. That's what I think Monmouth fans are worried about here, is balancing those two things, is that you don't want a team where the sum is greater than the parts when it comes to postseason play. And I think that that's a valid concern, but I think that we have those top flight guys in Dion and George, and then you got Malik and Marcus and Totley and Jarvis have not even scratched the surface. So I think that all of this will work its way out eventually. But I think for now, with the schedule the way it is with the back-to-backs, and nobody's out there playing like they got the yips, all right? It's not like we're putting out guys that are 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th guys, and they're out there overmatched. Everybody's out there, they're competing, they're playing well, and we're winning. So as long as you can win that way and continue to break teams down, I like it. And you know what? When it comes to the bigger games, like you said, in the postseason, maybe then you trim from 11 to 9 core guys, and that's all right as well, because some of those guys, it might not be their games to shine, but they've had plenty of opportunities throughout the regular season.
All right, going to one of our good friends, Mike on Facebook, always asks questions for us. This team is incredibly deep. By my count, there's about 11 guys on the roster who are talented enough to be starters and compete against any MAC starting five. Will this team play with lineups sticking together like shifts to maximize chemistry, or will it play best with players from the bench mixing in with the starters to throw different looks at opponents? I think King Rice has always done the latter. He's always done random rotations. I mean, there's times where, Diego and Chris Brady and another forward were out there at the same time. We're like, what's going on out here? And then he throws five guards out there when they have 2 7-footers. I'm like, all right, that doesn't make sense. And, King Rice is not afraid to put any combination out there. And we know that in the last 10 years. I think he will mix it up as much as he can. You'll see, Totley and Ruth, Totley and Hammond, Ruth and Pappas. You're going to see everybody out there. I think combination-wise, he's not afraid to throw anybody together. I don't know. He doesn't seem like a guy ever that's stuck to certain rotations. Obviously, when Justin was here, it was Justin, Micah, Jalon, Brady, and Dion the 1 year, and those guys got a lot of the starters minutes together, and they all played 25 to 35 minutes. But this isn't that team, and we haven't had that team since then. And usually he mixes up these teams and these minutes all over the place. So that's kind of what I see coming.
I totally agree with you. And this is why I say King, I don't believe that they're analytics based. I think that King is like that manager who goes to the bullpen because he has a feeling. That's what I think King is. He coaches with his mind and his heart and what he's seeing on the floor, and he will mix and match. And again, we just have to be patient and see how it plays out because these guys haven't had the offseason, preseason, and non-conference.
Listen, as long as he's not Grady Little from Boston and, keeping Pedro in, I'm fine with him going by his gut. Let's see. Brian R. on Facebook. Last question. What has surprised you or impressed you the most with this team? For example, the play of the freshman, Totley's game, Dion's new physique. Well, Dion's new physique, I think we all, our eyes bugged out of our heads when we saw him on TV and his biceps popping out. I think everybody kind of started staring a little bit because we didn't see that the last few years from him. He got a lot stronger. Most surprised with this team, I think I said it before, just how well they've meshed together this quickly. I mean, I saw this being a big problem, and I didn't see us being 3-1 at this point. I figured maybe we'd be 2-2 at best, based on our lack of games. I'm shocked with how quick these guys have meshed together and just throttled Canisius and played very well against St. Peter's. Despite, some time in that game where they looked really bad, they still only lost to St. Peter's by 2 points, and they didn't play well that day. So to me, that's the most surprising for me is I'm not that surprised over the freshman. Miles Ruth, how good he's played has surprised me. I'm not overly surprised by Vuga. I'm not overly surprised by Foster. I figured they would come in and make some contributions right away. But overall, I think that their chemistry has definitely surprised me the most.
Dion's new physique and the new hairstyle that he was rocking in the beginning of the year definitely turned some heads for me. But besides that, if we're really going to dive into something, I think that it's, like you said, the depth, the interrelatability of all these guys and how they are working so well together and how ready Miles Ruth has been to contribute at the point guard, which is the hardest position to play in Division I basketball as a freshman.
All right, Mark, any last words before we get out of here and start the new year?
One thing real quick, Iona somehow is enrolling next year's top recruit, 3 or 4 star center, Trey James early, and he's expected to join them this season, foregoing his senior year of high school. I don't know how any of this can be done, but
how's that possible?
The Gales have had some front court injury problems, and this is quite a drastic move for the young man in the Gales program. But this Patino, he loves it because the kid doesn't lose a year of eligibility this year. Everybody doesn't burn a year of eligibility. The one thing that we have to look at is Iona currently has 13 scholarships already spoken for this year. So it will be very interesting to see how Slick Rick, who's constantly had his credibility challenged over the years, pulls this rabbit out of his hat.
Somebody's going home in Iona. Somebody's leaving. All right. Well, that's all for us. We hope everybody has a great new year. If you're going out tonight, I don't know where you're going out, but if you're going out, please stay safe, wear the mask, be safe out there, try to spend it with your family. listen, 2021's got to be better. All right. It really can't get much worse out there. So, cheers to a much better 2021. Thank you, all Monmouth fans, for listening this year. Any last remarks, Mark, before we go?
I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to ask the questions. I think that it adds so much for us and for the viewers. And I hope that you guys liked what we gave you as our answers. Again, we're going to be open and honest and give you our off the cuff, views on everything. So thank you so much for all the support. Keep listening. Hope that 2021 is the best year yet for the Monmouth podcast.
All right, Monmouth fans, thanks for listening. Have a great 2021.